police and said there was an open door and said the cars are there, those are their cars, but they never leave their door open like it is now. And I'm paraphrasing here. So they already had that information. Now they're on the scene. Now it's up to them to do the checking.
And also the caller had stated, and they had information, that the owner is usually home at that time. Isn't that correct?
I believe so, yes.
So inspecting the home and getting all that information is fine, but talking to the neighbor that called the police, we don't have time. These officers didn't have time to do that. Is that your testimony today?
No, it's not.
So it would have been reasonable for them to have dispatch reach out to that caller?
Well, you use the term reasonable, and that's not the proper term here. The thing about it is how best to go about answering this call and checking that residence. What I'm saying is if you're going to prioritize all their options, calling the reportee back at that point in time with the officers on the scene would have been a lower priority. Now let's take an example of let's say a robbery in progress. Somebody calls in and says, I'm watching, this guy's got a gun on this cashier. You keep that individual on the line, and then you keep relaying to the responding units what that individual is seeing. We didn't have that here.
So, because this isn't just an important enough call, right?
I didn't say that.
I mean, you're kind of going back and forth.
No.
So, you want them... How about this? Would the defendant have been fired if he had knocked on that front door?
Probably not, no.
Would the defendant gotten in trouble for knocking on that front door?
Yes.
How?
If he relayed that to his sergeant or his other officers, they probably would have looked at him and said, Rookie, what did you do? Don't do that. You make sure that you find out what's going on there before you announce that the police are there. Because
you're really going to testify that a Fort Worth officer would have gotten in trouble by knocking on a citizen's front door?
in this case, in a same or similar circumstance to this case, given the nature of this call, his peers and his sergeant would have taken him to task, yes.
Do you know that he's announced himself on other open structure calls?
It's entirely possible, given the nature of that particular call.
So what you're saying is this is just all in a vacuum about what happened on East Allen Avenue on the early morning hours, October 12th, 2019, and that if there are other changes out there, they don't apply because of this particular call on that night?
Not saying that at all.
Okay. So, now they've checked the garage, they checked the cars in the driveway. What about the stuff that's lined up over there? Did you hear the testimony that Officer Darch and Officer Dean believed that stuff was being stacked up to take away?
Well, I didn't hear the testimony of Officer Darch, but I did hear the testimony of Officer Dean, and it is possible. Burglars do that. They'll go through someplace, they'll take the valuables, take whatever they're there for, and they'll stack them in one spot. That way, when they're done with the burglary, they bring up the vehicle. It's a lot quicker to load all the stuff into the car and get away.
You ever heard of confirmation bias?
Yes.
What is that?
Confirmation bias is when you have a pre-existing thought and you find some fact or something that supports that. Rather than a neutral analysis of what you actually have, you're wanting to confirm what you already think something is.
So you've already said that you heard Officer Dean testify that just after looking in those two front doors, he thought it was a burglary in progress. That's correct. You testified to that, haven't you?
That's one of the things he said could be, yes.
And then, so now he sees this, he and Darch both say they see this lawn furniture in the driveway, and that also contributes to their thinking that this is a burglary in progress. Didn't you hear that testimony as well?
Was it lawn furniture, or was it a weed whacker and a mower?
I'm sorry, lawn equipment.
Okay.
Didn't you hear that testimony as well?
I did.
So isn't that a little confirmation bias there? He's made his decision that this is a burglary in progress, and then now he's seeing this lawn equipment, and he's thinking, well, the bad guys are stacking stuff up.
What it is he's getting more information. The problem of it is the information he's getting, it could be one thing, it could be another thing.
But if he told you that's what he thought, we should listen to what he said. Isn't that correct?
Well, again, he testified a little all over the board on that.
But he said that he thought that stuff was stacked up by the bad guys committing the burglary in progress. You heard that, didn't you?
He said it could have been, yes.
And isn't that exactly what confirmation bias is? He looked through those front doors, thought the burglary was in progress, and now he's seen this lawn equipment, and it's okay, I've confirmed it. Yes, it is a burglary in progress.
Well, that could be one possibility. There were also other possibilities he was considering. He's testified to that.
But he said that, though, yesterday. Isn't that correct?
Among other testimony to other things.
But he said that yesterday. Isn't that correct?
Among other testimony to other things, yes.
Yes or no? He said that yesterday, didn't he?
He did, among other things.
Thank you, sir. Now, if you're thinking that the lawn equipment is being stacked up to take, wouldn't you agree with me that people don't keep lawnmowers in their homes?
You've never been to Channelview. I haven't seen it myself.
You haven't seen it yourself. So you would agree with me that people don't normally keep lawnmowers in their homes?
Normally, no.
People don't normally keep weed whackers in their homes?
Not normally, no.
Where do people normally keep a lawnmower?
Can be in the garage, side of the house.
Okay. Where do people normally keep a weed eater?
Garage, side of the house, shed.
Okay. So if you're thinking that the burglars are stacking this stuff up to take, should your next logical step be check out the garage?
If at that point in time, that is your final determination, that you have enough information to go, this is a burglary in progress. Then, as the order states, you call backup units, you call for a canine, you lock the place down. But he hadn't reached that conclusion, because it could have been that, or it could have been somebody that just doesn't really take good care of their equipment.
I want you to go back to that. What do the general orders say about a burglary in progress? What should the officers do?
Call for backup, call for canine.
The minute they think a burglary in progress is happening?
The minute they come to that conclusion, he hadn't come to that conclusion yet.
If he testified he came to that conclusion, should the jury believe that testimony?
They should take into account all of his testimony, not just one factoid.
If he believed there's a burglary in progress, the minute he made that decision, what did the general orders say he should do?
He hadn't made that decision.
If he made the decision that this was a burglary in progress, what do the Fort Worth Police Department general orders say he should do?
Okay, are you giving me a hypothetical?
Sure, hypothetical.
Okay, hypothetically, if Officer Dean would have come to the conclusion that I have a burglary in progress here, and it's highly likely there's a burglar still in there, then it's Fort Worth policy that they lock the scene down, they call for backup, they call for a canine.
Can I approach the witness again, Your Honor?
Yes, sir.
Again, I'm looking at 327 of the general orders, Part D. Do you recognize that?
I do.
And it says, if the officers have any reason to believe that a burglar may be still inside the building, they shall keep the exits and under surveillance and call for assistance. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
So it's, if the officer has any reason to believe that the bad guy is still inside, that's what they should do. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
And that's a shall keep those exits under surveillance, correct?
If you reach that conclusion. But look at the sentence just above it.
if officers find signs of forced entry or have any reason to believe. Did you hear him say that he thought that this screen yesterday on that side door had signs of a forced entry?
It could have been forced entry.
So, if he believed that was forced entry, then what he should have done, he shall keep all exits under surveillance. Isn't that correct?
If that's his final conclusion. That wasn't his final conclusion.
Did you hear him yesterday that he thought that there were signs of forced entry on that screen door on what you've already called the B side of the building?
That was one of his many responses, yes.
And then you, again, would agree with me that the general orders say that you shall, if you believe that you shall keep all exits under surveillance.
If that's your final determination on scene, yes.
Okay. Let's get back to the garage then. How did they inspect the garage?
Just fine.
Just a walk over looking at it. Just a quick walk by, you're okay with that?
Yes. Under those circumstances on this scene, yes.
Not a good idea to check and see if the garage door opens up real quick to see if it's easy to get into, maybe for the burglars to get the stuff that's stacked up on the driveway?
Not necessarily, no.
Not necessarily maybe see if that door's been jimmied a little bit?
Well, they can do that with a visual.
Not to see maybe if, and do you think they got close enough to tell if that door's been jimmied?
He walked right past it.
Was it broad daylight then?
It was not.
Okay. Do you think that it might have been a good idea just maybe even to shove on that door to see if the door even worked anymore?
When you're shoving on the door, you're making noise.
So that would have been bad to make noise.
Well, what I'm saying is, it's a consideration. What would shoving this way on the garage door have accomplished?
Well, if I'm there, maybe I would have shoved on this way of the garage door, and it just came wide open, and I see that the garage has a bunch of stuff missing, and I maybe confirm that the stuff that's stacked up in the driveway really is being stolen. Is that not good police work?
It was a roll-up door.
I'm talking about the door that's right next to the roll-up door.
Well, I thought we were talking about the roll-up door, because you were talking about
John,
that.
that's my fault for not being clear then.
Ah,
I'm talking about that door to the side of it.
so repeat your question then?
Maybe just shove on it and see if it just comes open. That been a good idea?
They're checking for signs of forced entry. And that, to me, that's a little bit more important than seeing whether or not they bothered to lock or latch the door.
Have you ever seen someone kick in a door and then push it like it's still closed?
Yes.
And it looks closed if you're just walking by it. Isn't that correct?
No, usually there's deformation to the lock, the knob. There could be deformation to the strike plate.
Could be.
Yes. In my experience, there is.
And did you ever just kind of shove on that door to see if it just came open? Or did you just look at all that and decide it being kicked open?
Again, it depends on the call. I mean, are you talking about my experience?
Sure, yeah, your experience.
Yeah, I really can't recall. The situation, honestly, where that's happened to me.
Okay. We'll move on from the garage then. Have you looked at that area that's in front of the gate and how it's configured with the house on one side and the garage on the other?
Yes,
You heard me talk about that yesterday, isn't that correct?
I did.
Once they're both at that gate, is there anyone covering those two front doors?
Nope,
No one's covering the two main exits that they've seen.
no,
No one knows if people are coming in and out of that house at that point.
not at that point, no.
And no one knows if anyone's coming to that house that may be armed, is that correct?
That's what now?
That's armed.
What about being?
Armed with weapons.
I didn't hear the first part. I don't hear well, I'm sorry.
That's okay. No one knows. They didn't know if somebody could have been coming out of that house with a weapon in hand, isn't that correct?
Not if they were exiting the front, no.
Is that a good place for officers to be in that particular situation?
Given the circumstances of this call, everything, the totality surrounding this call, yes, that was a good call.
Good police work that they're back there with their 6 totally uncovered, with a house possibly full of bad guys, with no one on the front door. That's your testimony.
Well, but that's not what we've seen here. One, they've already checked the living room area. That's not full of bad guys. Also, you say their 6 wasn't covered. Yes, it was. They're covering both their 6s.
Are you telling me somebody couldn't just sneak around that corner if they were both up there at that gate?
Well, their heads can be on a swivel, and you're constantly looking around you.
Can't you disagree with me? It would have been a good idea to put eyes on those front 2 doors.
In this case, given 2 officers, they had a choice to make. I believe that they made the right choice. They stayed together.
They had another choice, didn't they?
What was that?
Call for backup?
Not on that type of call, no.
You want to look at the general orders again?
Sure.
Is there anything, are you going to say there's something that general orders under silent alarm that they're not allowed to call for backup?
Oh, I didn't say that.
As a matter of fact, that part we just discussed, now Brooks witness again?
Yes, sir.
Section D says, if he finds signs of forced entry or of reason to believe, then they shall keep all exits under surveillance and call for assistance. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
There's nothing in the general orders about saying you are not allowed to ask for assistance or backup on an open structure.
No, not at all.
Okay. So, you're saying that they had to get in that backyard and check that window, is that correct? Or check what's in that backyard for the structure?
Well, they had to check what's in the backyard so they could continue checking the structure for forced entry.